these plants. Oh my gosh, we're in heaven. It doesn't get better than this. Life in its beauty and nature. Chautauqua Park, Boulder, Colorado. I've been in over 100 countries in the world, and this is, to me, as beautiful as life gets. This is God's magic on earth. I'm Mo Siegel. I'm the guy that started Celestial Seasonings. I have been really chiseled out of the Colorado Rockies. It's in my blood, deep in my blood. And my first home was on the side of Monarch Pass, about 2 miles from the trailhead of one of the Colorado 14ers. We ended up moving to a little Colorado town called Palmer Lake. Palmer Lake today, if you go there, it's still pretty remote. Back then it was really remote. But as a kid at about 8 years old, I used to pick these wild choke cherries. And these two ladies made jelly out of it. And that was really my first job in life of making money. At age 17, after I had spent 2 years in a Catholic monastery school, came home for that summer. Yeah, it was a summer of love and the Grateful Dead and all kinds of stuff. My father, he was very right-wing, and I wasn't so much. It got to a point where he said, "This house isn't big enough for the two of us. You're on your own." Dropped me off in downtown Denver with $75. I was 17 years old. No college money, no nada. But I don't regret that, because I think if I'd had a really good college education, would I have been the scrappy fighter that I turned out to be? In 1969, I got involved in a little natural food store in Aspen. It was one of the first in the United States, different from the pill shops. There were fruits and vegetables, and it was more about food and not about vitamins. And we gave away a free cup of tea to anyone that came in the store. And I realized that some of the boxes of tea that we were selling in the store, like peppermint and chamomile and rose hips, I was stepping on that stuff as I was hiking. So when I was up in Aspen that year, I picked tea and I dried it, and friends said, "Boy, you really ought to sell that stuff. It's really good." I go down to Boulder. I needed a job. I had absolutely no money, and I decided to pick more tea. Celestial started by picking free tea, and we picked it all over the mountains, Magnolia, all over the place. I always felt like the neighbors were wanting to cover up their shrubs when they saw me coming back with my bales of tea. First year, 4 or 5 of us picked what turned out to be dried 19 gunny sacks of tea. Gunny sacks were about this big around, and there was a little natural food store at 9th and Arapahoe. I thought they bought the tea. They wanted all 19 gunny sacks. But it turns out that I didn't know what the word consignment meant. And consignment meant when we sell it, you get the money. They took the 19 bales of tea, and it was 36 herbs that were picked wild in the mountains. And we had them up and mixed them and made the formulas up there on that tiny little shack in the mountains. I went off to Latin America, and I came back and found out that they had taken those 19 gunny sacks of tea and put them in little plastic bags, and I called it 36 herb tea when I left it to South America. They titled it Mo's 36 herb tea. And I came back and was surprised because they distributed it across the state in the health food, natural food stores. And I was as surprised as anybody how much people liked it. So the next year, a friend of mine, Michael Dominic, gave us the milk barn, and a really wonderful thing happened. A guy named John Hay moved to Boulder, and his brother Wick Hay had picked tea with me the year before. John came with the big money. Again, I had nothing. I told him about the tea thing. and he wanted to do it. We wanted to do it together. And he sold his sports car. We took that money to buy, the bare minimum, picked tea that summer, dried it out in Michael's barn. My then wife, Peggy, and another lady hand cut 10,000 bags. We'd hand stamp with a rubber stamp the label on the muslin cloth. And I must admit I'd gotten lazy over the winter. We only picked 24 herbs because 36 was just way too much work. Our fourth product was Sleepy Time Tea. Red Zinger was second, and Red Zinger made a big hit. One of the joys of working on Sleepy Time was John's first wife, Beth, was a really good artist. And she and I teamed up and we looked through all these Disney books, and strangely enough, we worked really hard at that silly little cute picture that's on the front of Sleepy Time. But 55 years later, it is still the #1 specialty tea in America. And the original artwork is the artwork that's on there. One day, Lipton, who their tea buyer, had been calling us the weeds by the swamp. He'd get interviewed, and he was a Brit, and he'd have that British weeds by the swamp. And then one day, Lipton realized that the weeds by the swamp was growing a lot. And in 1979, they launched a line of herb tea. And Lipton was owned by, at that point, a $50 billion Unilever company. Between early summer and fall, they went from 0 to 85% of the supermarkets in America. We were only in 15% of the supermarkets. It felt like lights out. In 1984, we got an offer from Kraft Foods. We got actually an offer from 3 companies, and they were the second highest bid. But I didn't feel good about the first highest bid. It just seemed like, I don't know if I wanted to do tea my whole life. What else could I do? At that point, I was into it for 15 years. We took the offer and sold the company to Kraft, and I stayed on for 2 years. Barney Feinblum took my job. What turned out to be a strange circumstance of all my nightmare visions, Kraft, 125-year-old company, started by the Northern Baptist Mr. Kraft that had his little horse and buggy and his cheese out of the back. Independent company gets bought by Philip Morris, the cigarette company. 3 years after we do the deal with Kraft, it's like our worst nightmare. They had Haagen-Dazs and Celestial. What they'd call niche pick, bought these cute little brands they thought they could build. The new head of the company, Philip Morris, said, "We don't want that stuff." So put the company out for bid. And Lipton wanted to buy it. We countered Lipton's offer, and we bought the company back. I came back on the board and put money in, and then Barney ran it. Then in 91, I came back and ran the company. But it was so fun to be back at full-time at Celestial. I missed it a lot, and the people. And I would say that over the years, we had the best people. The reason Celestial Seasonings started in Boulder was because I was in Boulder. Pretty simple. I love this town. I grew up in Colorado. Boulder's just been my home because I love it, but the environment was perfect. It just was the perfect fit, and entrepreneurship. So I feel like we were able to give back to our community, to a community that loved us and helped us.